Coming up this month, we visit Oak Grove Elementary for a planning exercise with teachers and get tips on outdoor burning. This and more coming up on Roanoke County Today.
Welcome back to the show. Joining me today is our Deputy Director of Planning, Phillip Thompson. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Sure. You've joined us before talking about some interesting planning studies going on in our community. And I know we have two new ones going on in Hollins and Oak Grove. So tell us a little bit about those.
Right. This is kind of piggybacking on 419. We've identified 10 or 12 areas in the county that we'd like to see walkable mixed-use areas. And we've identified those in the county. So we started with 419 as our first study. And now we're moving to Hollins and to Oak Grove. We're trying to do a similar type of study, different scale. But again, we're trying to look at where are the development or redevelopment opportunities that exist in these areas. We're looking at the infrastructure in place and is it adequate to handle the future growth. And we're also looking at what transportation improvements that need to be made to make it more of a mixed-use walkable community. Are there sidewalks, are there bikeways that we would add? How about transit? In addition to trying to relieve all the vehicle issues that we may have in those areas.
Sure. So we are here today at Oak Grove Elementary School, and we're talking with teachers. They're getting to participate in a fun exercise. Tell us a little bit about what they're doing.
Right. So we have kind of a informational gathering type of exercise for them, and so they're kind of identifying what are the places that they visit in Oak Grove frequently, and kind of how do they travel through this corridor today. So there's an existing conditions type of scenario, but we're also looking at what they want to see in the future. So what future businesses, stores, restaurants, amenities that they want to see, what type of parks that they want to locate and where they should be located in the area. Where do they want to have bike trails or sidewalks in this area so that it could be a walkable mixed-use community. So that's the exercise that they're doing today.
Okay, so you mentioned that the teachers behind us are participating in some exercises. I understand there was one, a visual preference exercise. What is that?
Right, so what we do is we give them a series of pictures, and again, there's no right or wrong answer, but it's trying to get them to pick what is their preference from a visual standpoint. So there was examples for transportation, modes of transportation, different types of trails, what type of mixed-use development they'd like to see, what type of stores, what type of public art or public art they'd like to see, public spaces. And so you try to get that, again, it helps provide some input into the process that's more picture-oriented, right? And so we've done this before. We did it as part of the Glenver plan many years ago. We did it again with the students. And so again, when we have all this information from their exercise on both the map exercise and also the visual preference survey, we're going to eventually compare how did the students do, how did the teachers do, and then how did the administration do, and try to present that all. And again, that'll be part of one of the mechanisms for public input throughout this entire process.
Okay, great. And why did you choose this particular school and utilizing the teachers in the school?
Well, for several factors. Number one, we started this partnership with the schools. We utilized the Student Advisory Council, and we did the same exercise with them to try to build that, to try to get young people involved in real-world planning exercises. So we started that dialogue with them. Obviously, Oak Grove Elementary School is in the study area. It is a key kind of component of that study.
Right.
They also represent the teachers, demographic that we typically don't get in our planning studies of our 25 to 35 demographic. So we wanted to use them as to try to build that relationship and get their input into what they like to see in their community.
And are you planning to hold any more meetings with other schools in the area, perhaps?
Yeah, so we'll do the same exercise in Hollins, try to get them involved. We're trying to also get the leadership involved with Hidden Valley Middle School and Hidden Valley High School. And also we'll look at Northside for Hollins and get them involved in that process as well. And then there'll be other public opportunities for input as well.
Okay, well this is a great opportunity, I think, for the teachers and the students to be involved in it, and it gives them a way of having a say way. So, and then you said you're having community meetings too at some point.
Right, so there's other public opportunities. We'll have a survey that'll come out for both studies. That'll be available starting in February, and we'll probably run that to the end of March or early April. We'll have a series of community meetings. There'll be a series of meetings in March, a series of meetings in May, and then we'll probably have another set of meetings in September or October once we've kind of got to have a draft plan. So that's another way. We tend to have business visits where we talk to business owners. We'll have focus groups and also stakeholder interviews.
Okay, another great way to improve our community.
Right.
Great. Now, if people are looking for more information, where can they find that?
Right, so we kind of established, we had Reimagine 419, and for these we're talking about Reimagine Oak Grove and Reimagine Hollins.
Sure.
And so we have a general thing called a website for www.roanokecountyva.gov/reimagine, and there you can get information about any of the planning studies that we're doing.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, and we look forward to coming back and talking with you about the progress seen.
Thank you for having me.
Sure. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show. Joining me today is Assistant County Administrator Richard Kaywood. Thanks for being with us today.
No, thank you for having me.
Sure. So for the past several years, we've been hearing about the potential construction of the Mountain Valley Pipeline, and I just wanted to invite you on the show today to talk with our citizens, or let our citizens hear about where we are now in the project.
Well, for the past 3 years, the county is really focused on participating in the regulatory process, and as you may know, the county has very limited control over this project, and so we've been making comments to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, about concerns we have about the project and other regulatory agencies. But as the federal government has issued its approvals on the project, we're now transitioning into thinking about this more in terms of how Roanoke County will help citizens manage issues that may come up as the project actually moves toward construction.
And what has the staff been doing to prepare for that?
Well, I think first and foremost, we've been trying to coordinate our efforts with all the parties that may be involved. And as you can imagine, a project of this scale and scope, there's a number of different agencies involved and a number of different county departments. So we've been going through a very deliberate planning effort to try to ensure that we're ready to respond to anything that we could possibly imagine might occur during the project. And just one very simple example are things like our trash and bus schedules that we have in the county. We want to make sure that the project doesn't interfere with either one of those activities.
Correct. And has there been coordination with external agencies as well?
Absolutely. And again, thinking about the scope of the project, Roanoke County is only a very small piece of a very large project. And for the bulk of the route in the state of Virginia, actually the state police will probably have a very important role. And although that role may be very limited in Roanoke County, we've certainly been coordinating with the state police should there be any need for a police response to any type of issue. There's other agencies like the health department that have a role. And we're also talking to our neighboring counties and jurisdictions so that, again, we all are kind of aware of each other's plans so that if there are any issues that arise during the project, we can respond in a coordinated fashion.
Sure. And what are some of the ways that we are reaching out to our citizens, communicating with them?
Well, we just hosted a community open house where we were trying to share really the same information I just conveyed to you about the planning efforts that were underway. We've also revamped the website or webpage that we have for the project on the county's website. And we've also set up a single point of contact for the project. So we have a dedicated email address and a dedicated phone number that citizens can use if they have an issue with the project during its construction.
Okay, and those are for non-emergency calls.
Correct. Always in the case of emergency, dial 911. But if, for example, let's say a citizen is having trouble with the school bus picking up their children because there was a blockage of traffic, we would want folks to call in on that number. Or say, for example, someone wanted to know, what was the activity that was going on near their home. We could do everything possible to try to answer a question like that.
Be a good resource of information for that.
Yes, and by using a single point of contact, it enables us to quickly connect that person with the proper staff member.
Great. Well, I'm sure we'll have you on for future episodes to just keep our citizens updated. And again, people can visit our website to find out more information about the project.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Roanoke County Today. My name is Brian Klingenpeel, and I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator for Roanoke County Fire and Rescue. February is a month that we think of as being solidly in the grips of winter, and it's true, it is. However, did you know that most of the state's wildfires happen during the months of February, March, and April? And that's because during these months, weather conditions are primed to make wildfires spread rapidly. We've been really dry around here during the fall and the winter so far, and those dry conditions coupled with lower humidities and higher winds are what make outdoor fires so dangerous this time of year. That's why the state's outdoor burn laws change every year from February 15th to April the 30th. During those months, there can be no open outdoor burning between the hours of midnight and 4 p.m. It is possible to burn between 4 p.m. and midnight. However, if you're a resident of Roanoke County, you must obtain a burn permit from the fire marshal's office for any fire that is larger than 3 by 3 by 2 and that's not considered for recreational or warming purposes. Violators of these statewide burn laws or Roanoke County ordinances could face fines or the cost of extinguishing the fire or the cost of any property damage that that fire may cause. Backyard burns are the #1 cause of wildfires in the state of Virginia. Even a fire that you think may be completely out can still have embers that can be picked up by gusty winds and thrown into dry grass or leaves. Another common cause of wildfires here in Roanoke County is the disposal of fireplace and wood stove ashes. Those ashes can have hot embers in them that last for days. So please do not dispose of your ashes in a cardboard box or a paper bag. You would want to let those ashes cool for several days in a metal container before drowning them with water and then spreading them outside. Even a carelessly discarded cigarette that might be discarded into a wood pile or dry leaves or some mulch can cause a wildfire that could be deadly or threaten a home or another structure. So if you're smoking outside, it's best to use a metal container with some sand in it to extinguish that cigarette. In these mild drought conditions, one snowstorm or one significant rainfall makes people tend to forget that the vegetation this time of year is still dry and dormant. The fire risk can change with the weather and also with the local landscape. Homes and subdivisions that are surrounded by wooded areas are at a much higher risk for wildfires, even in suburban areas that might be far away from a national forest. So we just want you to be very careful with any outdoor burning that you do during the months of February, March, and April. And please be reminded that if you are a resident of Roanoke County and you're planning on burning outdoors, you must obtain a burn permit from the fire marshal's office. The fire marshal's office can be reached at 777-8732 to request a burn permit, or you can find us online at roanokecountyva.gov/fire rescue.
Welcome back to the show. Joining me today is Dan O'Donnell, Assistant County Administrator. Welcome to our show.
Good to be here, thanks.
Sure. So Roanoke County recently conducted a telephone survey to its citizens. Tell us a little bit about that survey.
Sure. Well, this is kind of part of our ongoing community strategic planning process. If you recall, a couple years ago, we had a big process to get input from the public on what the county should be doing, how we should be doing it, what the priorities of the citizens were. We turned that into a strategic plan, and this is about a year and a half after the development of the plan. We decided it was kind of time to take the citizens' pulse on how we're doing and really what they thought the quality of life in the county was, as well as kind of rate the county services. So we had Roanoke College's Institute for Policy and Opinion Research do a telephone survey. They surveyed 604 citizens and both cell phones and landline phones, and made sure it was just statistically significant sample of the residents, and asked a series of questions about quality of life, economic development, and the attitudes of the citizens towards the county service delivery. So that's kind of what we got back.
Okay, and what were the results?
Well, a lot of good news, I think. In terms of the quality of life, over 90% of the people that responded said that the quality of life in Roanoke County is either good or excellent, which we thought was really good. So people like living here. Not that we don't have work to do, but quality of life came out very high. And in some of the service things, they're very pleased with public safety and education. But we see they seem to think we need to do a little more work on economic development and job attraction and encouraging younger professionals to live here, that kind of thing. But overall, it was very positive. And it kind of affirmed that we are in the right direction, I think, with our strategic planning processes.
Good. So we received high marks.
For the most part, there's always some things that people aren't real thrilled with.
Sure.
Some of those are in our control and some aren't. One of the things that seemed to be a very long-term concern for people was the transportation issues. And as most people know, the county doesn't do actually road construction projects except for in certain small project exceptions. That's the Virginia Department of Transportation. But we do work closely with the Department of Transportation to make sure we can do what we can to make our road system and transportation as good as it can be. But that is one of the concerns, I think, that the citizens have.
Now, you mentioned that the telephone survey had been done a few years ago.
Right.
Did you notice any differences between the two surveys?
Well, yeah, actually, we did the survey first in 2015, in December of 2015, and then we kind of replicated it in December of 2017 and just got the results put together really in January. But a lot of the questions were the same, and there are many more similarities than there are differences. But we asked about 14 different service delivery categories, or 17 different service delivery categories. And in 14 of those, the actual opinions towards those services improved a little bit. Some of those improvements were within the margin of error, but when you have 14 out of 17 showing improvement, that's a good sign. So I think people like what we're doing for the most part. And of course, there's always room for improvement. And another couple things that came out pretty strongly is the attitude of the citizens towards the management of the government has improved. In the last survey in 2015, 63% said it was good or excellent, and this time it went up to 70%, with only a small percentage saying that they didn't think the management was very good. Another thing, this has to do with what you do with public information, is the citizens told us that there was an improvement in the public information, the communication that goes to the citizens. They actually thought there was about a 9% difference in whether our communication were good or excellent this time. So those were good signs. Another thing, this was a new question, but we asked if people wanted us to invest in infrastructure for economic development, and about 84% of the respondents said yes, we should be moving forward with infrastructure investment in things like Explorer Park and the 419 corridor and things like that. So I think people understand that to grow you have to do some investment. So those were encouraging things. And once again, the thing that they continue to not like is snow removal, which we also don't do, but that was one that continued to be the same. But the changes for the most part were positive.
Good. And so why is it important to conduct a survey every few years?
Well, it really is. There's a lot of ways to make sure that you're doing what the citizens want you to do. One is just the anecdotal discussions you have in community groups, but to really get a statistically valid sample of the whole population of the county, it's good to use a scientifically based, statistically valid survey, and it shows your progress, where you're getting better, and what you need to work on. So it's really just a way to keep the pulse of the public in terms of service delivery and what we can do to serve the citizens.
Sure. And if people would like to see the results of the survey or look at the entire survey, where can they find that information?
Right. Well, it is posted on our website, and it's at Roanoke County VA .gov/CSP survey is the address. And it's also connected to all of the community strategic planning information. Right. So if you want to learn not just about the survey, but about the whole community strategic planning process, all of that is in the same place on our website. So we encourage citizens to go ahead and look at that stuff.
Good. Good. Well, thank you so much for giving us this update. It sounds like the county is moving in the right direction.
We're trying to do all we can. Thanks.
Good. Well, we appreciate you joining us.
Appreciate it.
We'll be right back.
And we wanted to talk to you all before work started in Virginia or in the county. But quite frankly, we don't really know, are they going to start work on February 1st or March 1st or a year from March 1st? And we don't know that because they haven't told us yet. So we are trying to encourage the company to give us detailed information about the schedule. We'd like to share that with the public. We hope they would do that directly. Right now, we just don't have that to share with you. We wish we did. These other titles I can go through pictorially. And I want to give the disclaimer that I am not a pipeline expert, and the pictures you're getting ready to see are taken from a bunch of different projects all around the country. A lot of them are from the Dakota Access Project because that had a lot of pictures online. I will tell you that pipe is about half of the size of this one, so it's going to look a little smaller in some of the pictures than what we expect to see here, and I'll try to point that out. So you're going to see a lot of different projects and not just one, but I tried to take what, based on all the research I've done, what I think this will look like from start to finish and what you as a resident or someone near the project or interested is likely to see as work starts. The first thing we expect to see is the creation of a very large staging, or what I would call a laydown area, somewhere in the area. Again, we don't know how many or where these will be in our area. These would be things that are outside of the FERC process, so this is not something where there's a picture or a square on a map. But typically, the larger staging areas, well, the project overall is broken down into 11 spreads or segments, the way they've divvied it up. Each one typically has one or two of these sites that are somewhere in the 75 to 100 acre range, and this is where the contractor is probably going to be bringing a lot of pipe, a lot of equipment. It's probably going to be a very big, very visible site, and that really has to kind of start to come together in the early days of the project because that's where all the other activity is going to spring from. Tree clearing, and really in the short run, this is tree cutting. There are some threatened and endangered species requirements that affect the project that prevent tree clearing in a lot of areas between the end of March and mid-November. So starting April 1st through, I believe it's November 16th, due to endangered and threatened bats and birds, you can't cut certain trees down. Well, on this project, they can't do any work until they cut trees down. So they have, thinking about it almost being February now, there's really a 2-month window in which they would have to get trees on the ground before they have to wait 6 months. And that's what they've been saying in their court filings, that they're very anxious to start this. But in the short run, all they have to do is cut the tree down. It doesn't have to go anywhere to meet this federal requirement. So we expect for a while it may look just like this, with trees that are just cut, but nothing else has happened yet. It may also look like this. This is a tree harvester. We don't know exactly how they're going to go about the tree cutting or clearing, but it could be a mechanized piece of equipment like this. The next significant stage of the project is everything that's left after the tree is removed. All the roots and topsoil and everything has to be cleared away. And when Chief Simon was talking earlier about on other types of construction projects, oftentimes people will want to burn that material, and that's where they would have to get a permit from the county, and that's a fairly tightly regulated process. But it would start to look like a clearing that you might see for a power line or some other utility at this stage. The next step, and this is where this is different than other types of construction, you basically have a road and a trench being kind of constructed in parallel, and you'll see the importance of those two pieces here in a second. And once the road is built and the trench is starting to be there, they have to bring the pipe out. I've actually seen some of this pipe from a train. I think it was probably going to the ACP, but it was the actual pipe being used in Virginia. It is very large. The sections are 40 feet long. They take up the entire length of a tractor trailer. This is not something that a couple of people could pick up and move. It's all going to be moved with equipment. So there's a very large operation just to move the pipe around and get it near where it's going to ultimately go. And I think that would be a very visible operation. This particular pipe may be a little bigger than ours. I'm not sure. This picture is actually taken in Canada, but it was the best picture I could find of somebody moving pipe to a pipeline project. The next stage, and this is Dakota Access, so this is a little smaller pipe, is the pipe has to be arranged in its near final position. So it has to be laid out on the ground. And you can see these very large pieces of equipment that are just there to handle the pipe and move it around. You can also see you have a fairly healthy road beside it. You all have seen pictures like this probably before with this kind of view of the project. The next step is the pipe has to be put together and bent to fit the contours of the land. And so there's what looks like this assembly line that goes up and down the road that I was describing earlier with specialized pieces of equipment that bend the pipe. For any corner it has to turn, but in particular for up and down movement of the ground, it has to fit, because it's not flexible. And then there's a lot of work done to prepare the pipe to be welded together to make basically a single piece of pipe. Next step is to inspect and test and work on the welds, which I know very little about welding other than it's pretty important that they be done correctly and that there's a lot of inspection of these welds. So you probably see a lot of activity like that. Then the next big step, which I didn't really understand when I started learning about this project, is large, long lengths of this have to be picked up together and laid as a unit into the trench after all these other steps have finished, because it's so big it can't really be worked with once they get it sort of down into the trench to be ultimately backfilled. And again, this pipe in this picture is about half of the size of what we would see here, but as you can see, the terrain, even though there's no trees, looks a little bit familiar in that they're in the mountains with this picture. After that, pipe has to be backfilled. And then the process that I think Roanoke County and many citizens will be working with for a long time is the ground is supposed to be restored to its original contour and vegetation reestablished. And as we know from other projects in our area, that's often very challenging. We have highly erodible soils, we have steep slopes, we have a lot of things that work against this going well. And again, I think regardless of the nature of the project, this is going to be something that's going to take a lot of effort. And then you end up with a final product, and I chose this picture very intentionally. First, there's water in the bottom of the picture, which is something that's important to us, but you can see on this particular project that it doesn't look like everything kind of came into place just so at the top of the image. Looks like there's maybe some erosion there, even though it's turned green toward the bottom. These are things that would be of a big concern to Roanoke County if we saw something that looked like that in the county. So we're going to want to work with a company, with FERC, with DEQ, in this case, to make sure this area up here looks just as green as what you see below, because that's a direct threat to water quality if you have active erosion on any site in the county. So we would see ourselves spending a lot of time there. And then the final image, and this is, I believe, Campbell Hills subdivision in the county. This is not something the county made, but somebody else that was involved in the project did a rendering looking at it from the vantage point of a location in the county where, the final product will look like probably a more curvy version of a fairly large electric utility corridor. So that is, from what we understand, the basic sequence of construction, sequence of operation. In addition to all this, I just didn't have pictures I could show you. Another significant thing that happens early on that's going to look very similar is there's quite a few access roads to get to where the project is going to be built that have to be constructed. The process will be very similar, except for we'll make a road after they clear the trees. But again, the roads themselves can have all the same issues that the main pipe corridor does, and we would be concerned about all of them.